I know we're paying for roads and good things, and that we need as a society in a large country. But the Americans do find it a hard pill to swallow. So all these things that I'm leading into the rest of them indicates why this product is quite expensive.
I'll say that it's worth 143, like based on what our prices are
I'm
here.
gonna get you to write that down.
Yeah. Well, no, like based on what you can get for 143 bucks in Manitoba, like other things in that comparable price range. Absolutely, this is.
Yeah, well, good. That's good to know, and that gives me confidence. I met with all the buyers last 2 days, and they were very happy. And they literally said that the next one we're going to try when we get into it is the price range they're looking for. So they are very interested in bringing that to the market.
Robin, I was a little distracted, but what's the strength of the Inverne single cask ex bourbon?
It is 46%.
46.
Yeah. And we do have, and online as we're talking about, we do have cask strength in the 57.9, 57, 58 points, something or other. They're outstanding. They're wonderful.
Now, I just started live streaming this just for people to get a sense of Macaloney's and help to spread the word a little bit. I'll just turn this to myself for a second. Welcome, Mark here at WhiskyWhistle. We're here with Robin Morgan from Macaloney's Island Distillery.
Thank you very much.
The name has just recently changed, and we might talk about that, but probably not. That's not really the focal point of our tasting today. Anyway, so for those who are watching and listening in, welcome. And we're going to get into number 2. We just tried the Inverne ex bourbon.
Correct.
Is that going to have a name change?
We're going to stick with Inverne.
Yeah.
Now, Inverne is a river in Scotland where the confluence of that river changes every year. So the bank could be over here, 50 meters. It could change 25 meters to the north or the south. So Dr. Graham Macaloney, our CEO and whiskey maker, and his creative mind decided to make a whiskey, single malt, single cask, that was based on change. And this change will take us to Madeiras, as we were mentioning, Ports, Olorosos, Pedro Jimenez, Muscats, Chardonnays, and various other ones. We will continue to harvest from specific ones, but they'll all be under the single malt, single cask line. Now, the one that we have here, and I apologize that I showed you earlier, is the Glenloy. This name will change. It won't.
Okay.
We cannot use Glenloy anymore. And we also cannot use the name on all the bottles, Caledonian. So it'll be Macaloney's Island Distillery. But funny enough, when I was in the States, everybody kept on asking me, maybe you guys are thinking the same thing, where's Macaloney's Island? And like, I never thought of that. The emails just came in that were changing their names, and I'm just okay. And then everybody just kept on asking me, where's Macaloney's Island? I said, well, it's on the island of Vancouver Island. It's an island in an island. And so I told Mr. Macaloney, and he took a pause for a second. He says, well, your sell sheets in the States can just say Macaloney's, well, I suggested Macaloney's Distillery. So we're going with that in the States. So there may be something in the last minute that may change. We do not know, but at this point in time, it is Macaloney's Island on an island. Okay. So it's still delicious, if not more so. So the next one we're going to try, this lovely amber appearance, very dark, rich, copper. This one here is our single malt, single cask, Portuguese red wine Barrique.
Yeah.
So as I described, Portuguese red wine Barrique is an STR system invented by Dr. Jim Swan. This is a 46% unchilled filtered.
Smells very nice.
Yeah.
Absolutely lovely. Like you get some Christmas cakes in there, chocolates, you're getting beautiful.
Oh.
Thank you very much.
Like a medium dark.
Oh.
They all taste the same.
I'm going to put the cork
Smells
on
like
just in
dessert.
case. Spill it.
And this one here will retail for about
Cherries.
$123, but here in the province,
Cherries?
it's going to be $143. This is the one product that they are thinking of bringing in.
To Manitoba.
Into Manitoba.
Fantastic.
So with the Portuguese red wine Barrique, Dr. Jim Swan basically invented taking these Portuguese red wine barrels. We take them and we'll shave the interior core 3 to 5 millimeters, removing used wood and exposing new wood. Now, that new wood still has Portuguese red wine in it. So we have to think about, on average, on all reconditioned barrels or barrels that are going to be used as finishes, 4 to 7 liters of liquid will be in the wood itself. Okay, so even though we're shaving 3 to 5 millimeters, that fresh wood, that fresh tannins, the hemicellulose, all the sugars that are going to be at our disposal, we'll put in a nice flame in there. We'll lightly toast the interior core, caramelizing it. Of course, we're going to get into some Maillard reaction, right? So amino acids, condensation of sugars, and then we'll put in a heavy flame and we'll alligator it. So we all know the alligator, like heavy torch, looking at the fire, and you can see the squares. What does that do? Well, once we put in the new make, that new make is all the volatile components that are going to be absorbed by that heavy charcoal, and then you have the caramelization of the nice toasting. It's going to extract the sugars, the vanillas, and other crazier components that have been created by the concentration of toasting the red wine. So mostly a lot of amino acids. So you're going to get some umami. So you're going to get some savoriness out of this one. And I think we all have different complexities in savoriness. Savoriness is basically amino acids, succinic, malic, and lactic acids, and they do resonate on the palate. With this one here, as of course we'll say sludge. On the nose, just beautiful, beautiful. Like a little bit of a nice, delicate red wine notes are there, but it's not overbearing.
We noticed cherry.
Yeah,
right?
yeah, and cherries and
chocolate.
Chocolate covered berries.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
You're getting those pitted fruits, of course, right in there, but you're getting also some exotic flavors. The lovely color there, the extraction of that. So the STR system, as I mentioned earlier on, well, that's lovely. A little bit of licorice in there as well. Honey, again, definitely that you're getting more voluminous, that the honey, the sweeter essence is coming forward. But it is dry in and of itself. You definitely get the dryness on the tip of the tongue. It comes across, but it's all fruit. And back to those caramelized oranges again that you're getting. I think a little bit of Christmas cake in there.
I was going to say some stewed fruits and some really real richness on the finish, and just carries for a very long time here.
Very persistent, very persistent. Now with these STR barrels, since we're shaving the interior core, and this is a key. Remember I mentioned earlier, there's a couple of different things. There's always an equation that leads down to the final result of the whiskey. So on the island, we have a 6 to 7%, 6 to 12% blow off angel share. But since we're shaving the interior core of this and then reconditioning it by toasting and recharring it, what is happening, the barrel in and of itself is thinner. So it allows it to bounce far more than it would if it was a normal stab of a considerable thickness. Now, on the island of Vancouver, or excuse me, on the Macaloney's Island, on Vancouver Island, we have very dry, warm summers. Literally, the grass goes brown in most areas if it's not been watered on a regular basis. The grass, we say, doesn't start to grow until September. And then in the wintertime, it's cool, wet winters. So you have these warm, dry, long summers. Wood is absorbing. And then in the wintertime, again, it's bouncing back and forth. But it's more so. It's far more aggressive than it would normally be in other areas of the world, and then taking into account, of course, this high blow off, this high angel share. All of this is culminating into a more mature whiskey that is actually noted on the palate. And other things, of course, we talked about tight cuts, which tends to produce a more ester-driven liquid, not reintroducing the faints, another aspect to this equation. And all these and more, as we'll discuss, lead to this beautifully matured whiskey at a relatively young age. It does, right off the bat, we notice that it has quite a mature profile, quite complex, beautiful color, very rich.
Was this the one that won the? It was going to win like a whiskey award, but it wasn't a whiskey yet. It was still a spirit. But nobody was convinced that you could have that kind of color and depth and flavor from like a 2-year-old spirit.
There's a few of them that were in that situation, but here's the flyer here. So it has won 2 World Whiskey Awards, and then of course right here, there's just one the John, and you might know this one, the John Barleycorn, which is a really well-regarded awards. So this one is effectively Canada's best single malt, single cask whiskey in multi-years. And of course, one of the reasons we were being sued, to segue just a wee bit, is that Mr. Macaloney went to all the big players, the SWA, and said, these are the names that we're going to use. We're going to use Caledonian, we're going to use Glenloy, we're going to use Inverne, et cetera, et cetera. And they were like, fine, no problem with that. But then when we won over 22 international awards within 1 year.
That's shocking.
It is, absolutely. And even
I mean, I should say, shocking that can happen, but it's incredible that it happened for you.
Absolutely, absolutely. Now, I'm going to say that I always, when Graham was doing his crowdfunding many years ago, my parents live on the island. They have a llama farm, and any excuse to get out there and see my parents. So, it'd be great to work on that distillery. And then years later, I am. But I always recognized that they were doing something unique. And all the little stories that I'm telling you, it really is about where you put your distillery more often than not. Amrut, of course, became very famous in a short period of time because their barrels, in a year, those barrels are blowing off at 20, possibly +%. And the extraction that you've ever seen a good Amrut, it's delicious whiskeys. There's no bad whiskeys. Some are better than others. And they did very well. One thing that I was always interested why they never did the Solero system within that, because I think it's very experimental and they would do well by that. But again, Graham picked a very unique place in the world, and particularly in Canada, that we're able to make a product, as Mark so succinctly put, that the rest of the world is going like, wow, these guys are winning awards. Let's pump this off to our lawyers and see what's going on here. And that's basically what it is. So as Graham said about 3-4 weeks ago, he feels that we came to an amicable agreement, and I'm happy to hear that. Of course, I was in the States with all this crazy sell sheets and stuff like that, and we're changing things on the fly. But the second expression and the first one, of course, are single malt series, single malt, single cask series. They're all winners, and every one of them that comes out, people such as yourself, they're buying them up. And if you have the ones with the name Caledonian on them, for me as a consultant at Waddington's Auction House, they're collectible. They're absolutely collectible.
That's why I was getting the extra bottles.
Yeah.
I'm gonna try myself, and one to pay off my mortgage.
Good.
Yeah.
Well, you have my card now. I'm more than happy to tell you what the pricing is before you keep track of your investment. It's a good investment whiskey. It never goes down. Just the throat.
For the Americans watching, I don't know why, but it seems like USA doesn't really have any auction houses that handle spirits. But in Canada, we have 2. We have Waddington's in Ontario,
Iron Gate.
and we also have
Iron Gate.
One more time.
Iron Gate.
Where is that one?
Well, they are out of Alberta now.
Alberta.
Yeah, I do a bit of consulting for them, but
And there's also Hull's and what's their? It's a partnership. There's 2 different names. One of them is Hull's.
I don't know the one.
I'll send you the
Yeah.
link. But anyway, so there's some legal options to if you decide that you something that you have isn't something that you'd like to taste and you want to sell that and pay for your kids' education, you can do that in Canada, and it shouldn't be vilified like it is in USA.
Well, Sotheby's in New York, they do.
Oh, that's right, they do.
They're
The big ones.
Yeah, they were quite large.
And Christie's as well, I think.
Yeah, I think Christie's. I thought that was out of Singapore, but they do have a few though.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and some of what's going now is really important is that some Canadian whiskeys are becoming more desirable. We look at the CC40. CC40, I was buying at $230, and they're selling for $1,200 a bottle now.
Impressive.
Yeah, $1,600 was the highest that it went for, and I have a few.
Oh.
So, what am I paying for? I'll renovate the basement for a bigger whiskey bar. So, that being said, we are going in the right direction. And if you own a bunch of bottles, quite frankly. So, and I guess because I have to talk to Graham about this, but a few of our bottles we weren't going to sell on auction. I designed a bunch of wooden boxes, beautiful, and some Russian pine. And they're all inlaid with their logo, the old logo. They're all numbered. They're hand signed by Graham in a gold Sharpie. And I got ex-bourbon and Portuguese red wine Barrique, I think, at 5 and 5, and I put up for auction. But then we had to take them off the auction. Graham suggested to take them off auction, just due to the fact that we're litigation. But in our craziness, that they slipped through, and 3 of them sold. So, which is okay. There's 10. I think we can live with that. I don't think they're going to sue us for that. But whoever has those 3 now is, and they sold for $400 a box already. And there's not even, so think about what they'll be in 10 years, something like that. Those will probably easily over $1,000, $2,000 bottles.
And on that topic, I wanted to ask, since you worked so closely with Jim Swan in the very early formative time of the distillery, what did he think of the naming of the distillery and plans for product names?
I'm not privy to that, but what I can tell you is that when he tasted the new make, before he passed away, he said that in his career, 45 years, it was some of the best new make he's ever helped design.
Amazing.
So that's, now that being said, would I be able to go to the bathroom?
Oh, please. Yes.
Break.
Yeah.
All
I drank, since I was so dehydrated, I drank like 3 bottles of water before I started. Now it's just running through a grease through goose.
All right, so let's maybe just chat amongst ourselves so far.
Is it down the hall?
It's we're in the middle of the hallway, Robin.
Thank you. Are we roll free?
We've just had the ex-bourbon and the Portuguese so far, I think, right?
Yeah.
How are you
So
feeling?
I could have this for dinner.
Yeah.
Like this.
Yeah, the second one, it kind of tastes like there's this Japanese plum wine that you have to put a salted plum in it. That's what I'm
Meshu?
Yeah. Meshu, yeah.
Lord, yeah, we had
Yeah, that's what we had, yeah.
Bluefish, I think it was. It was good. The cask strength of this one, like there was 2. They had one, I think it was like 57.9, and then there was another one. It's a little bit higher, 15.4, I think it was. And I was like, well, I'm eventually going to crack one of these open, but which one, and which one's my backup? So when they announced the whole, settlement, whatever, I'm like, okay, well, I'm just going to get another one. So now I've got one that I've got open, and we drink, we enjoy, and the other 2 are wait until that very special. I know every day is special, but there's a special occasion that you just have to like crack that open. And
For sure.
it depends on who's coming to visit. Those bottles can go pretty quick.
Now, Trevor, I think, did you come to Canada at a late point in your life?
No, my grandma moved here when she was in her 20s and 30s,
Oh,
and the entire family was here.
and you spent some time abroad?
No,
No.
well, just
You have this
travel.
wonderful accent.
Yes,
Just travel. I hear that a lot, and they're like, "Oh, it must be a Canadian accent." I'm like, "Canadians have accents?" But then I'll talk to my Canadian friends. They're like, "Oh yeah, it's this." And it could just be that. Usually, like I'm in sales as well. I sell a different product. I mean, not as enjoyable as this. So before COVID, I was on the road roughly 200 days out of the year, and it's just everywhere, coast to coast to coast, and like I'd be out in like Nova Scotia and Newfoundland, and I'd be visiting their distilleries and seeing, and there's some, like I've got some rums that are aged like in casks on a boat in the ocean, just to like speed up the whole process, and then also have a little story attached to it as well. And then go to Victoria, and you'll stumble upon these guys, and it's just, I mean, it's incredible. So it's.
Well, it made me wonder, but anyway, sorry if that was a broken record. Maybe you've heard that before, but you've got a great speaking voice.
It's a compliment.
Yeah.
Thank you.
All right.
And then it's interesting that you mentioned that we are looking to possibly store our barrels because we're producing so many liquids. Excuse me, so many liters this year. 214,000 we put down last year. So Graham is discussing getting a warehouse right on the ocean, not a barge because it's just so tenuous on the west coast. But at the end of the day, if we do think about putting it on the barge, it would be a very cool idea. I think that salinity that you're getting on the palate as well would be accentuated, particularly when we get into the peated version, which I think that really resonates with a lot of clients. So again, the second expression is very, very, I like to think, complex. There's a lot going on in there. particularly a little bit of coffee notes that I noticed. Did anybody pick up on those?
Yeah.
Lightly roasted, a little bit of phenolics, but not overbearing. I think it's well balanced with the ester-driven nature of our spirits, and just an excellent whiskey strength as well. The key thing we're talking about, these are unchill filtered. So our unchill filtration, as we all know, if we put an ice cube in at something that's unchill filtered, more often than not, it'll cloud up. Well, we're at a whiskey strength at 46% that it will not. But the interesting thing is, sometimes we're doing experiments and it did actually cloud up. So we're looking now to see that all our whiskeys going forward will more often than not be, in that decision that hasn't been finalized, like 46.3. And I'm a big fan of the point something, right? It just seems to be more unique. It's like, this is a point something. Or our cask strengths, all right? Our cask strengths always have that point on them. And so this one is probably one of our top sellers, actually. People really like that.
It's really quite
wine,
nice.
that elegance to it,
Yeah.
the beautiful clean finish.
And what was your price point on this one?
Yeah.
This one these are both at $143.43 Manitoba prices online. And since we're here in Manitoba, I'll just mention those ones. But as you know, the prices are different from our distillery. People are able to go to our distillery in Canada and purchase bottles, and we will deliver all across Canada. So if you buy 2
And that's
bottles,
much better for the distiller to buy direct, obviously.
Absolutely. And I'm more than happy to, I'll fire you off. Actually, I think we talked about that. I'm going to send you a discount code, which is generated just for your group and anybody online. And what that'll do, it'll give everybody 10% off. But if you order 2 bottles or more, we'll pay for we'll pay for shipping. Yeah, which is a lot. If we're moving all the way out to the East Coast, right? It could be up to like $40, $50 sometimes. So it's quite crazy. So we'd be more than happy to offer that to people. Now, shall we move on to the third one?
We shall.
Okay. Now, the third one is a very unique expression. This here is our Oaken Poucheen. So in the old days, you're in Ireland, and you and me are sitting across, and your farm's over there, and my farm's over here. And so, you got any potatoes left after the season? And they says, I got a few that wife doesn't know about. Wink, wink. And we would come together, and we would distill these potatoes in our little makeshift pot still in the hidden somewhere from the wives. And we would have our Oaken Poucheen, which is basically rough hooch moonshine. Nowadays, and in terms of its artisanal approach, we are using 100% barley. And under the same principle, this is triple distilled pot still. So anybody here would probably know triple distilled pot still. The premise of triple distilled pot still is one thing only. 60% of the barley is unmalted and 40% of it is malted. We're using that 40% scarifications to break down the unmalted barley. This tends to give a more creamier mouth feel.
Vanilla.
So I think you're going to actually get the most smoothest. They're all very smooth, of course, but in the style of triple distilled pot still, Irish style. I'm not going to say Irish whiskey, Mark, because after our last conversation about, possibly getting sued, it's a style, and that's what we have here. So I like to think this is the color on this one in comparison to the second one too. People will say to me, oh, I don't like Irish whiskeys and this and that. And I go, well, some of the Irish whiskeys are some of my favorite because they're light. Well, they obviously have not had enough Irish whiskey.
Exactly.
Irish whiskeys can be anything from deep to light to soft to abrupt and everything in between, with the colors from here to our first expression to the expression here. But also I've seen Irish whiskeys to this very dark amber. Maybe not as dense, but again, they're all over the map, if not some of the most creative whiskeys that are put out in the market. At this point in time, Irish whiskeys are outstripping single malt whiskeys in sales. In the next few years, they'll be the dominant force. Now, that does not preclude the fact that the American whiskeys, which are going to be, and I'm sure I don't know if you discussed with your groups or online, the American whiskeys are making a triple distilled, but it's out of Virginia.
Oh, right, yes.
And it's good, but is it as good as ours? I'm not gonna, like, again, there's no bad whiskey, some are better than others, and I never disparage another distillery. I'm just going to say that I really like ours. So this is absolutely the reason I joined this company. I feel that this is a well-balanced dram. I'll let you try and then I'll
Tastes like a library. It's old book taste.
Love it.
Old book smell and a taste.
Thank you for saying that. I wanted to say also that this will really appeal to the Canadian rye whiskey lovers because that unmalted rye really does give the whiskey some nice spice.
Sweet spice.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Okay.
And also the interesting thing here on the nose, this is quite pronounced. I'm getting big green apples. And there's a little bit of bite in the end, which I tend to find in triple pot stills. In the end, there might be something a little bit more tight in a lovely way. Also, there's a nice secondary warmth, a glow that comes back on. And that's where I see my apples again. And definitely there's some floral notes. A little bit of white rose. And then with this one too, there's a lot more citrus, but it's a really dark citrus. Sweet, soft, warming.
It's almost like a blood orange.
Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah, that's
Yep.
some of the deep, it's very good. That's with the malt though, I'm getting a little bit of toast, a little bit of Maillard. There's some savoriness that's going on there. I get a little bit more the grain coming across as some toasted bread.
Like pumpernickel bread.
I don't know if anybody else is getting a little bit of caramel, like faint caramel behind that, maybe behind that vanilla that you were talking
Maybe.
about.
See, on my nose, it was like brown sugar and oatmeal.
Oatmeal.
Some
Yeah.
of those oats again,
Yeah.
so the grain. It's quite complex. It's a very complex dram. And just a little FYI, and as I was mentioning earlier on, I think I passed it around, but we are producing a single malt with this now called Killet, which is pronounceable because we're getting into some unpronounceables. And my understanding, this is the Church of the Forest.
Okay.
That's what that means. And Graham traces his history back before they were in Scotland. They were in Ireland for many generations before their family his ancestors went to Scotland. And so he likes to pull a lot of those experiences in with his expressions. Of course, we have something that, as some of you met me on when I was wearing my kilt. Of course, it's not a clan kilt. It's the angel share kilt. We do have a lot of Irish and Scottish affinity, and that's what we want to do. We want to bring something that's more culturally. We're not trying to reintroduce anything. We're not trying to be anything. We're not. We're just having history. Everybody has a history in Scotland or Ireland. My grandfather is Williamson. I don't wear that kilt though. I wear a Scottish national. Keeps it no fights. I don't want to go to places and you're wearing a kilt that people says, "Oh, the Williamsons." Well, we gotta go. So that affinity, Graham brings to the table a very well developed, lovely color, excellent appearance, on the palate, very complex, and then also the finish. This finish is very long. Again, I get a little bit more of those oats, a little more toasted, a little jammy, that toffee. I would say that is probably there too.
Yeah.
Little coffee, I get a little bit of that, but also as well as pitted fruits. The honey is there, as well as some apricot and green apples on the nose. It's absolutely stunning. Very
Robin, what do you find the mixologists, which ones are they really enjoying to create with?
good. At the Fairmont in Vancouver Island, it's the Glenloy.
Glenloy.
And the Glenloy is, of course, our signature classic lineup. Next time I'd like to do a tasting with that.
That'd be
With
great.
the cask strength as well as that. They make a cocktail called the West Coast Sour. Now, for me, I'm like, this is very expensive. It's for a single malt. I mean, to make a cocktail.
Yeah.
But the cocktail it's $26. And funny story. So I go there, and it took me a while to get into the Fairmont. I want to be in all the Fairmonts across Canada, and so I went to the bar general manager, and he said, "We go there. Well, come by. Let's try the whiskey." let's see what it tastes like. So, okay, great. Let's try a cocktail. He was very proud of it. So I'm trying the cocktail, and I was like, oh, this is lovely. I love sours. It's so delicious. And I said, oh, and he says, you should have another one if you like it. I said, yeah, I'll have another one.
Oh no.
So I had one more. But as I had the second one, he left and never came back. And the waitress came with the here's your $56 for 2 drinks. I'm like, what if my boss is going to let me slide this one under? But they were delicious, and apparently they're doing really well. The peated one, which we'll try in the end, penicillin.
Yeah, that'd be nice. That'd be very good.
Absolutely. I mean, I think the penicillin's an utilized cocktail, but I thought that it would be really cool to get the penicillin out while the pandemic is going around, because everybody's doing anything. It's better than maybe invermicillin. Is that what it's called? The dewormer. It's like, can I just have a penicillin cocktail and I'm all good? But I think the penicillin is great. Obviously, the rusty nail is really good. With this next lovely thing, the sky's the limit in regards to what you want to do with it. But for me, I would say again, the penicillin and the rusty nail and the West Coast Sour.
Cool.
Yeah.
And there's one question from online from David, and I guess he's in Europe, and he's wondering about if there's any plans for distribution in Europe anytime soon.
That's an excellent question. I have a colleague. His name is James Cordner, and he's out of. I'm trying to think of now. He's out of Scotland, and so he's in charge of Europe. And we're in Germany right now. We're working in Denmark. Whereabouts is your viewer right now? You'd say?
I don't think he said where he is. Let me look back here.
I'm more than happy to send you his information. He's out of Craigallachie.
David Geske, something like that. David, if you're still watching, could you let us know where you are? But
and I can send you the information for James Cordner. He's basically my counterpart in Europe.
Yeah.
And so he's doing Germany right now. He's doing Netherlands. And we're working on France, Whiskey de Maison. But we're having some issues. We were having some issues due to our litigation. And since they've been rectified, now we're able to sell now full-heartedly in France. So that's amazing. So that's great. And the French love whiskey, as we all know. I mean, they drink more whiskey than pretty well anybody.
I think per capita, right? Per capita, they're a huge consumer of
massive.
whiskey.
Yeah. And the number one whiskey in France is Glen Grant, which is on top. I love Glen Grant. It's a great whiskey. And also right now, I just got into China, so we're just working that out. And I'm just negotiating in Japan, and I'm looking to get into Korea. That's a very big market for me, so I'm just trying to find a distributor there, and of course Taiwan. And because Taiwan and us have sort of a sister-brother relationship, where Cavalan, of course, that distillery was consulted by Dr. Jim Swan.
Right. Yeah.
And then, of course, it was a 2000, and I don't know the dates, but 2011, 2012, and 2015, Cavalan won effectively best single malt whiskey in the world. And that's exactly sort of the same premise of where we're going with that. When they say the distillery works with Dr. Jim Swan, it's the golden touch, or the Jim Swan golden touch. Everything he touches turns to gold. And Cavalan is a good example. Kilhoman's a great example on Isla expression. They're coming along quite lovely. They're holding their own. So for us, the only Canadian distillery that's going to push, I guess, the levels of experimentation as we just tried here, and the next one we should get into 100% Oloroso and Pedro Jimenez. And I just like holding up the bottle because
That's beautiful.
Did you show this to your viewers? Like how deep and dense that
Not
is? It's almost like it's black.
Cerid?
Yeah. This is actually Sierra Braca. Sierra Braca. Everybody at the distillery calls it Sherry Braca, right? Because they're just like.
Now, Will is our Gaelic club expert. Give it a go.
I would have gone with Sherry Brook.
It's like.
One more time.
I'm not the expert,
Oh, okay.
so I would have gone with Sherry Brook.
Sherry Roth. Okay, cool.
But I'm not a Gaelic speaker.
That
I
would be
just
the Mac.
You're an enthusiast.
yes.
Yeah, the Macaloney as
So
well too.
so don't take that as gospel. I'm
Get
sure
the
someone
comments.
and that's that one there.
from the
Mac-
home
Oh.
country.
Yeah, and then
What?
that was Macaloney.
That's really
Mac and the
sweet.
Bray. Okay.
And there we go. You want to take that one too. So and I should probably. So the third one. Wow. Sorry, the fourth one.
4.
Yeah, I was looking at it. Boy, I already drank it. I love the color of this. So it's 60% Pedro Jimenez and 40% Oloroso.
Very dark. Look at that, eh?
Yeah, and this is a spirit again.
Mm.
I do not tell a lot of people that this is actually a single malt. We will bring this out in a red box, and it's called the Inverne series. And the Inverne will be single malt, single cask, but it'll be in the sherry expressions. This one just blows people away in regards to just not only, again, taking into account the distilling process and our environment and our terroir, but the color in itself, this almost like dark coffee, deep copper, brown.
Extremely dark.
It's almost a Christmas cake.
And we're still
Big.
at 46%, correct?
46%. Yeah, this all the whole lineup is 46% unchill filtered, no color adding. But we don't have any plans for making this into a cask strength. I think the cask strength, as everybody can see this thing, the concentration of this
Right.
is so dark and so deep. If we were to put this into a cask strength, I think it'd be overbearing.
It's very.
Yeah, this is Mr. Macaloney has brought this down in a lovely way. I mean, just to bring it down 46, it's just absolutely sublime. I'm transfixed by the beautiful color, the aromas, the aromatics. I guess here in Winnipeg, and which I hear gets very, very cold, one of these by a fire, nice, lovely
Definitely.
Cuban, which you can't get in the States.
It's a really nice clean sherry too. I'm not getting any, sulfur at all, which is great.
Well, the barrels are very well picked, and that's a very good point. That sulfur can be a really bad issue, or even a residual slight amount of it.
It's almost a vermouth.
Mm.
Oh,
Mm.
How old would this be right now, this particular bottle?
The liquid in there is 28 months, 24 to 28 months. Now that, again, rapid maturation system.
Yeah.
In our environment, but this is lovely. I mean, it just melts in your mouth. There's deep chocolate in there as well. Dark raisins.
Yeah.
Black pepper this time.
Mm-hmm.
You know, the background, of course, there's that really strong, I feel like the backbone of this is some roasted almonds that are there. Getting that definitely again back to some oats, some dark roasted oats. And that could also go back to the almonds I'm getting. The finish, you get some kind of a nice medium plus finish, and then a nice little crisp cherry finish, a little bite. And with that warmth.
It's like a candied cherry, though. Right?
Black currants, maybe. Black currants.
Okay. Yeah, I was
But
thinking
we've
something
seen
darker
black
than
currants.
raisins. Yeah.
And we've seen black currants in some other iterations as well as we were going through it.
It's my
Again,
favorite.
a lot of black fruit esters. I say black cherries. This would be great. I have to sneak a couple of Cuban cigars down in my suitcase.
Now, I'm way behind on people sort of chatting online, but that fellow David, he's in Spain. So hopefully he can source that from France first. And then, I mean, obviously at some point in the next 5 to 10 year plan, there'll be a Spanish distribution setup. I'm
Well,
sure.
possibly, but I'll tell you, it's James at MacaloneyDistillers.com.
james@macaloney.distillers.com. Okay, that's pretty easy. I'm gonna put that in the text.
And they contact him, and he travels all over. I know that he's in Spain, not at this time, but he will be, and he has been. So that market is absolutely open. Please call him and start a relationship, because even if you're outside of Spain, again, Germany, France, Netherlands, Scotland, UK, in and of itself, we have a policy that he can probably ship you a sample pack, and a sample pack will give you 4 or 5 expressions of 50 ml, and you can try those. And everybody here can actually send one.
Most
to
of
you.
those, they're like
Little
little
square
tiny
bottles,
square
I think?
bottles. Yeah, it was supposed to be a limited run, I think, last year. So I bought a couple, and then more were released, and I bought more because
Good
it's
for
a
you.
perfect gift.
They
Oh,
are.
yeah.
They're absolutely
Just to
perfect,
kind
and
of show
they're
off
beautiful.
what this
And
is.
Yeah, the
miniatures,
Very nice.
I mean, are also highly collectible. And I mean, like,
Yeah,
I hate
yeah,
to
a
keep
pretty
talking
good
about that. I know
collection.
some viewers are triggered by the idea of the resale of whiskey, but I mean, people have been doing this probably since whiskey was first bottled. You know, it's a commodity. It has value, and for some people, it's like that bottle that I tried 20 years ago. I want that experience again. And at that point, you're probably wealthier. You're doing better in your career. You're willing to pay more for it. That's just how the world works for, you know, things like this. So,
And I was mentioning earlier, all those who are Canadian online, we all know about the CC40. I was buying them all day long. Well, I only have about 4 in my collection, but at $230 plus. Now they're anywhere between $1,200 and $1,600 a bottle. Then it got into the Chronicle series, the 40 to 41, 42, and 44 just released. I love the color of the bottle, the box, which is actually reminiscent of the Inverne habit in the single cats. But I like to say that, you know, please promote Canadian whiskey, because we've been producing whiskey as long as the Americans have, and our history of selling them a lot of whiskey so they can get through the Depression and Prohibition and all these various different types of situations. And that brings me to my point, is that when I was in Ontario, looking at one of my clients for Waddington's Auction House, there's a box that a client had in Lake Erie. So I drove 2 hours down to look at these bottles, and they had a bunch of bottles just strewn in their basement that they pulled out. In the old days, all the corks were about 1.5 inches, Canadian ones, and all the bottles were blown. But they were lead-lined capsules. These lead-lined capsules were all deteriorated, and then the corks were deteriorated with all this mold in it. So I have to take 2 bottles back to my house, and I took a 3/4 inch drill bit. I drilled down halfway, and I put some electrical tape in the top. I measured on the outside electrical tape, so I know I didn't punch through. I went all the way down 3/4 inch, and I looked in, and the cork was in good condition. So then I took a 3/8 inch drill bit and went all the way down just before it started popping out. And I have 2 lights, a backlight, so I can see it just popping out. And then I pulled it back out, and then I took a corkscrew and I pulled it out slowly, and it came out. It was intact. But at the end, it was almost like a necrosis, where it was like over. Now this bottle was a Corby's. On the box of it said 1916.
Oh my
Impressive.
goodness.
Yeah, so it's a Corby's blend. We're all of us Canadians, we know Corby's as. And I got 2 bottles of them, and I pulled it out and I poured the whiskey, which we're trying our 4th expression, was as dark as that, maybe a little lighter. And I put it to my nose. And I was like, oh my gosh! And I was getting cherries. I was getting these incredible. It was in condition. It wasn't out of condition. And I still have some. If anybody's in Toronto, or when I'm there, I still have some. Another bottle too. And it was some of the best whiskey that I've ever had in my life. So I evaluated these bottles. These ones were testers at $7,000 a bottle. Now, the reason I did it at $7,000 a bottle is because they had another case that still had the old straps from it, all the metal straps that went around, like the original. And what they did, these were the ones that the prohibitionists would take over to the river. And down in Lake Erie, they have all the marshes that come off of the Lake Erie, and people would be there, and they would put the boxes on, and then they go back across Lake Erie. So these are one of the boxes that was left in an old farmhouse that they were selling across the border. So once I told them the price of these bottles, they said, no, we're going to hold on to them. And I said, well, you sell them now, you make a lot of money. If you don't sell them, you're going to make a lot more money. So whiskey bottles are just going up in price all over the place.
Yeah.
And it's great to see that. Our bottles, of course, since we were just finishing litigation, as I mentioned, and I told you about a sale recently in Waddington's, our prices have just gone up. And the reason we tried this experiment, or any experiment for that example, you look at Cavalin. Cavalin's a good example. Their bottles now are going for the young distillery. Their bottles are going for $600, or I've never seen anything maybe more than that, anywhere between $300 and $600. But the price of their whiskeys are going up because people find them desirable and collectible, and people will buy them.
At the Edmonton airport, they've got the little whiskey store just after security, and they've got like a whole row of all the Cavalans at the top. And the owner, like, I mean, obviously he loves whiskey. Like, he'll talk your ear off about any one of them. But then you're trying to justify like something that, you know, you may or not have tried before to like bring back home and whatever else. But he's got them all, and they're all up in that price range too.
It's crazy. Now, I think your viewers and everybody here will like this. So Crown Royal, we do sell or auction on at Waddington's, and I know we're talking about two different things here: our whiskeys and my consulting. But Crown Royal, the bottles, if they're 1952s, they go anywhere between $300 and $400.
And that's a big change even from 5 years ago.
And that's a blend.
Yeah.
Now, here's the thing: if anybody Canadian, so the Crown Royal, the caps of them are the Crown Royal, so they're blue, the gold, right? So all of them are gold now, but the oldest one is a 1948. And it's royal purple. Okay. Now, I was at that time, since I'm the only person in this country that appraises bottles for Waddington's. There's other ones now, newer ones, but not as big or as old as Waddington's. So I evaluated this bottle. Okay, it was 1948, and I was still always learning. We're always learning about whiskeys. So I appraised the bottle between $300 and $400. And the first day of the auction went $400. By the end of the day, it was at $600. I'm like, that's interesting. It's just old. Next day, it was $1,000. And then it's a week auction. And halfway through the week, it was at $5,000. And I was like, what is going on here? And then it auctioned out at over $6,000. But the Royal Purple, Crown Royal, and it's one of the first series, right? But anything from 1948 on. So if anybody has them, I met people at the LCBO or whatever, and he goes, my dad's got them in his basement. We all have our parents. Remember the plywood bars that we had? You go in there when we were kids, and we go there. Dad's not around. Put a little bit of water in there. We went out and ordered BMXs. But everybody has them all across Canada. We have these plywood bars, right? And for middle class when it really went out. But through that, we've seen all these bottles that are sitting there that people discard, and they're there. There's history in a bottle, and it's amazing. And I'm always hunting them down. Now, if you have one, I'm only offering $2,000. But the end of the day is, that's still a good deal. But look into that. It's incredible where we're going. I think that we're a new paradigm for Canadian whiskeys. We're making everybody's new distilleries. This gentleman here, Shelter Point, we talked about that. McKinnon. Other various distilleries all across
Patent
the country.
5, who is imminent, like very soon. How do you know when?
Probably late
Whiskey?
October, early November.
October.
So very soon.
They're doing a whiskey.
Yeah, we have
That'll
our
be great.
first whiskey. It's being finished in a PX sherry cask.
So you're with your
That's-
patent 5.
Yeah. I actually blended out our first whiskey.
Oh,
Decided on the finishing cask.
Oh.
Yeah.
That's what fills up our
That
gin
you also
drawer.
like gin.
Yeah.
So.
You send me out.
That's
I'll
very
send you a
good.
bottle. You send me a bottle.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Sip
Robin,
the Navy string.
I have a question a couple questions from online. One is sherry in this Sherry,
Sherry,
kind
kind of like sherry.
Yeah.
Okay.
We have Sarah de Braca.
were the sherry casks actually used in a bodega in Jerez, Spain?
There's one of them, the PX was, and the Oloroso was not. So
Okay.
they are actually the
So
Coopers.
the PX was the Oloroso was seasoned with
Correct.
Oloroso.
Yeah.
Okay. And then
That's
this,
a very good question. Actually.
Mhm. And the second question was, how wet was the barrel? I'm just going to highlight this question. I just highlighting it. how much sherry was still in the barrel before the spirit was added. In other words, how wet was the barrel at that point in time of adding the Macaloney's new make to the barrel?
They're quite wet. I don't know the volume, but when they come over, they still have liquid in them.
And I'd say that what I've researched myself is that a new barrel that's just been dumped can have at least 8 liters, sometimes a little bit more, because if you just let it sit, there's probably going to still be a little bit of something sloshing on the bottom.
No, absolutely. So as I mentioned earlier, particularly in a lot of pre-used barrels or second fills, first fills, is up to 4 to 7 liters. Okay, so let's just talk on a standard hogshead on average. But since these are sherries, more often than not, they're going to be 300 liters. So they're going to have more than 10 liters, up to 15 liters that we'll see sometimes in there. 10 to 15 in that range. But these are just larger barrels, and that absorption is going to take, and then transportation and all those other various things.
And so long range, when you think about that, when you have a distiller that's reusing casks, some people think, oh, it's a reused cask, that's not good. But it's got that 10 liters of whatever was in there, 10, 20, 30-year-old whiskey, that immediately helps to meld and kind of bring some continuity with the new make spirit.
And this is a good example, Mark. So let's just, for all intents and purposes, let's just say all intents and purposes, these are single malt, single casks. And this is ex-bourbon. Okay, so it's Cuarta Salva. And then let's put in the Portuguese red wine Barrique. So there's extraction right there.
Right.
Whatever it's pulling out at that level or that evaporation, all those things being equal, that is really a good indication of how that works. Like the tea bag effect. But and it then leads to the quality of it. This is one of our top sellers. I'm a big fan, Mark, of finished products.
I agree. And I think also that refill casks, if it's second fill, hey, if that first fill was a great cask that had some great liquid in it, there's no problem with advertising second fill. It's the whiskey that does the talking, right?
Absolutely. Well, here's a good example of that. There's these are the ones I drag around with me. There's no dragging, but where is that one? Oh yeah. No, did somebody have the Glenloy?
Yeah.
So the Glenloy for this one, thank you very much. So this will be ex-American bourbon for its first part of its life and its maturation, and then we transfer it to Portuguese red wine Barriques, and then we finish twice Oloroso and then Pedro Jimenez. So it's multi-cask finish. Now that alone, since we send this out to international awards, it wins. So I would use this as an indicator that even the people that are tasting it, they don't necessarily know what the percentages are. We're looking at 70, 60, 30, and then 10 and 10 or 10 and 15, depending on what it is. But that's roughly what it is. So I just dropped a bottle of this when I was in LA 2 weeks ago, our cask strength finish. And that was at 58.9. That's a big boy. And I'm expecting that to be awarded something because they're resonating with people. People are picking up on cask finish. People love them. That's why we were talking earlier prior to this this tasting. People are into Madeiras. They're into obviously Oloroso. Macallan made its fame pretty well on the fact that everything is basically Oloroso and PXs. And for obvious reason, they're doing something great. But now we're seeing crazy stuff. Pork finish. Love the pork finish. All those big nutty notes coming out of that. A little more drier. Muscat, I would say the same thing. Makes wine notes, a little bit more front acidity. So you're getting all these crazy things. And people collect those. Specifically when we're chatting, people go out there and they go, what do you collect? I just collect, not for me, I'll collect anything. Personally, I only collect rare malt collection from Casio. So, and everything else too, but that's one I focus on because there's so many bottles, right? I just got to get them all. Never happened. But some people just say, what do you collect? I collect single malt, single cask. And what do you collect? I collect finishes. I collect cask finishes or low limited series. And that's kind of an interesting thing about our world with whiskey that makes it so dynamic. Now, we should probably try one of my other favorites. This one is always a
Wild.
big hit. In fact, all of them are big hits, as we know. This triple distilled pot still was absolutely incredible, wasn't it? This sherry expression, obviously the 2 single malt, single cask, but this was very unique, very deep, very rich, cigar lover's
Yeah.
dream. And then our fifth one.
Yeah. Isn't it amazing?
This is the peated expression. So again, because I like everybody getting involved and telling me what they think, and I'll keep it to a minimum. End of the day, this is Canada's only peated expression. This, in fact, is North America's only peated expression. And people can argue with me, but they say there's other peated expressions. Yes, but they're barrels that are coming over that had previous liquid in them that was peated. We peat on our facility. We have a proprietary peater smoker where it's basically a big trough, if I call it like this, a big trough. And this is open and it'll have a little curve on top that we can take a curtain and close everything in. It's all electronic and we'll fill it up. There's a false bottom on here and there's a port. And this false bottom with some slats, a lot of holes in them. We fill it up with barley and then we'll hook up the water supply and the water supply will raise right up to the top, immerse the barley, sits for a while, lowers. We'll let that occur over a few days, 4 days actually, and then we'll do it 3 times. 1, 2, 3. And over that period of time, we're going to malt the barley, and then once that's done, we leave it for a bit. We take the water supply system out, drain, then we hook another pipe up to it, which is hooked to our smoker, which is right there. And we have all our founder owners. So you have not been there yet. You're gonna have to come and do that. It's during the wintertime. It's crazy, crazy, crazy. Like the creosote, the deep. You gotta buy clothes that you'll never want to wear again. So this smoke will go in there, and the curtains will go up, and we'll fill this thing full of smoke, and we'll use various different types of wood. We'll even use seaweed. We'll put seaweed into it, and we've imparted some. I wish I had some. It's amazing. We just won best in the world for that. And then over a period of time, and what the people will do is they'll go in there, the founder owners really put a part of their hard work and love into these whiskeys as well, which is really important, particularly this. So we have a machine, and it's a big box, and it has a computer on it, and you just unscrew it, and we just pile some barley in there, push a few buttons, it'll tell the moisture content, it'll tell the phenolical compounds. You guys probably have one of those in your distillery?
We actually don't malt our own barley.
Okay, fair enough. And then they'll just check it out, and then they just keep records. And these people will work all night long. Sometimes I'm in my office, and I want to go and meet our founder owners, and I'll come out with a wee dram, like something peaty, right? Because it's damp and it's cold during the winter months in the island. And I just introduced myself when I first came on board, give them a little drink, and I go, good luck, because it's all night long, and they can go inside and stuff like that. But it's really interesting to see that we are the only ones outside of the Inner Hebrides, Scotland, that produces a true peated whiskey. Where does the peat come from? It comes from Scotland, yes, of course, because we are trying to source our own in Souk, Ontario, but also we pull it from the Olympic Peninsula, Washington State, which is very highly known for their peat as well. There's a couple of American distilleries that do use that, but they do a different process, not so much like ours. This is an interesting thing. The new make in this, the clear, and I always have to use, when this thing came out, this was voted best new make in the world. So when we say the best new make in the world, it's already award-winning prior to even going into the barrels. And that's quite unique. You don't see that a lot with a lot of products around the world. And I just have to pull this up. So that was in 2020, best new make in the world, World Whiskey Awards. That's quite seminal,
Cool, very cool.
right? I mean, against all those large distilleries from far and wide. Then we put it into our barrels, and we peat it ourselves. We do everything else. So this is 54 ppms. So think we use as an example Ardbeg 10.
Okay.
And it is an absolute stunner on the nose.
This is amazing. Yeah, it smells like my dad's workshop. It smells like oil soaked rags, but in the best way.
Linseed oil,
Yeah,
a little
yes,
bit.
that's
Linseed
it. That was
oil.
the bright. That was the bright bit. Yeah.
And it's interesting you say that. Also, we're still getting a little bit of house style in there. A little bit of the ester driven, nice sort of comparative sort of tertiary components are coming up, that nice almonds as a backbone. The smoke in it, it's
Yeah.
not overbearing.
No, but it's there.
It's
but-
elegant.
Yeah.
Very, very elegant.
So it's there's a farminess, kind of like Kilchoman. However, it's sweeter and more like hay that has kind of weathered,
Earthiness.
had a bit of like a winter,
Yeah.
a winter of kind of like, the hay kind of breaks down, and it really gives off a nice sweet kind of warming.
It's a vegetal note
Right.
that kind of reminds me of green tobacco and leather.
Okay.
That like it's super complicated.
It is.
Now,
Maybe a saddle.
See, I
silk.
thought it was Easter eggs and sulfur on the nose.
I get a little bit, it's interesting because I get a little bit of airplane glue in there.
Okay.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Another question from my friend named Daniel online. He's asking, when is the Alberta release going to happen?
For what we do have product in
have
Alberta.
product in Alberta?
Yeah, there's product in Connect Logistics at this point in time.
Okay.
Yeah, all of the things that we're trying on the table are in Connect, plus with a couple of other of our original vatted expressions. So things like Blair Ethol and Ben Rhines, other vatted, I can't remember at this point in time, but we, prior to us putting out our own expressions and having enough volume to go to market, we, Dr. Graham Macaloney, would put out some vatted expressions that we brought over.
Kind of like independent bottlings under your own label.
Correct,
Okay.
correct. And we can't sell those in BC, and we're not selling them here. Alberta is the only place. Since that time, what happens, we've developed, we use the 2-row barley, as we mentioned, through the government. We are now designated as a craft distillery. And since we're a craft distillery, we cannot utilize those vatted whiskeys for sale in BC or the United States, but they are in Alberta, and it gives people the opportunity to buy some of our vatted whiskeys. There's still some out there, and they're amazing. I like to think the Isla expressions was quite nice. That's the one that I think that really Graham Macaloney liked. But yes, we are in Alberta, long story short.
Great. Any idea which stores in Edmonton might eventually have the product?
Ooh, not
Keg and Cork?
I think so. It's a large chain.
What selling craft sellers?
Craft Sellers, it sounds familiar.
From Calgary,
Yeah,
Craft
I
Sellers.
could say
Yeah,
yeah,
Calgary and
Okay.
Edmonton.
yeah, and but it's not in Kensington at this point in time. We will be pushing stuff out, but
Great.
we do know that it's there. The best to maybe just, I know it's a bit of a jumble between independents and corporation there, but it's probably best maybe to look at some of the larger one. There's actually Whiskeys of the World.
Whiskey of the World.
Yeah,
Okay.
that's a good one. That's a downtown, and we actually have done a few tastings with them. They're a great store, and they have some of these vatted expressions.
Cool.
Those are quite rare.
Good news. Okay, so Daniel, you can find that in Alberta. And one more question, and I'm sorry to bother the people that are sitting here with us, but you mentioned 214,000 liters were produced last year, and now
That's
that
correct.
is actual volume of whiskey.
That's volume of whiskey.
What is the industry terminology, LPA, liters of pure alcohol per year? Do you know what that number is for your distillery?
Well, that changes every year depending on how much production. But say, for example, we do, I don't know, for every distillation, we get about 350 absolute alcohol. So it's about how many batches we do
350 liters
times
Of
exactly.
absolute alcohol, and that's per day.
Yeah, per batch. So,
batch.
but yeah, exactly.
One
So
batch per day,
one batch per day,
roughly.
effectively.
Okay,
But that's
so-
not. They also have to take into account that we do triple distilled pot still.
Right.
So we collect our second distillation,
yeah.
and then once we get enough volume, then we'll do our distillation. So that takes into account that as well. Our distillation season just ended about 2 weeks ago.
So that means if you wanted to run your distillery full of max on production, 350 liters of pure alcohol per day times 365 days a year. And if you do one shift, that's 127,000 liters of pure alcohol. If you do two shifts, it'd be 250,000 if you want to do 24-hour production.
Wow, it's crazy.
That'd be nuts.
Yeah.
But yeah,
But
that's
we
big.
did do, but
That's big.
I don't know the math behind, or because I don't do the day-to-day in the distillery.
Yeah.
I'm out there pounding the pavement. Graham did say that they laid down 214,000
Liters of whiskey. Amazing. That's great.
Yeah, and we are looking for more warehouses. So for me,
Got a
the big
basement. It's a big basement.
Excellent.
Your
Yeah,
storage
we're gonna
fees
do-
are quite reasonable.
and a new pipeline. We are actively looking for a new warehouse, and I did mention that maybe possible locations on the dock or something like that. Or has anybody ever been to Bouchard Gardens?
Many years
Many
ago.
years ago.
Yeah, it's like the #1 destination. Yeah, it's beautiful. It's amazing. If you like gardens, it's crazy. It's just absolutely.
Gardens would be better if there was whiskey in them.
Very much.
That's the point that I was going. And now I don't even know if I'm even allowed to say this, but they are possibly in negotiation where there's a warehouse. It's a very large area. It's one of the best gardens in the country, and there might be an area in the back where it's gardens all around, and there's a big warehouse, and we might store it in there. And the interesting thing about that is you have all these interesting plants and flowers and flora and fauna around there that may possibly influence, and we always say possibly influence the overall outcome of the final product. So I don't know where Mr. Macaloney is with that. I know that was something he discussed with us, but I found it very intriguing and very unique in regards to other distilleries, what they're doing in and of themselves. Now, the old place that I remember was Park and Tilford in North Vancouver, British Columbia, where they had the gardens. It was very famous gardens, one of the best gardens. But it was all concrete, so you couldn't have that effect. But if this is a wooden warehouse, there could be possibly some residual effects from the environment. So we're actively looking right now. It's exciting.
That is
Exciting
really
times.
exciting.
Yeah.
I think this peated whiskey is quite fantastic. It's the peat is not as punchy as say Ardbeg or Octomore, but there's a smokiness that is just unique in and of itself. Quite tasty, quite sippable, and I think for people that are turned off by that really harsh Octomore, Ardbeg, Lafroy peat, they'll probably enjoy this, and they may not even realize that it's peated.
It's interesting you say that. I call this, for me, simply put, and it's not sweet, but I call it the sweet peat because there is some honey tonality in there, but it's also elegant. It's very elegant. It's very approachable, and it definitely has those monikers and has some salinity. Definitely some great salinity. Residual, a little bit of iodine. Again, I'm getting some chocolate is in there. But the salt, definitely that black pepper. Like all those things are there. Also, maybe a little bit of again, getting some tobacco, and I'm getting some campfire.
Yeah.
It's all the things that you want in a really nice, elegant peated whiskey, and 100% Canadian, and that's the key thing right there. If we're making something, and this, just to let you know, this is not even a whiskey. This is a spirit. And I may have mentioned that earlier on, but we just released our, and I may have shown that we just released the Calais, which was Church of the Field, Church of the Forest. So this is our first one. This was just released, right? So this is now out, but it's so if you're interested, and actually I think I give you my card. There is a date that we're going to set. They only bottled a few for me to take to. I was doing Toronto Whiskey Festival. I was doing a whiskey festival recently. I'm sorry, I'm like the 200 days of traveling that we were talking about. I'm kind of in that mode. So I'm like between dehydrations and post hangover mitigation world. But I was just received 2 bottles of those and 3 bottles of them, and they were well received. Everybody loved them. But that is, just to let you know, that's actually peated in Muscat barrels.
Okay.
Yeah, so that's crazy delicious. It's super complex. A lot of I think more nuttier tones out of that one. Drier for me. There is still some nice structure of esters, but not overall. It is a different beast, but it's still 100% peated single malt whiskey made on the island. So it's good.
Like this one here is very much like, if I had a friend that they don't like whiskey because it's smoky, it's this, whatever else. Like I always introduce them to something lighter, like an Irish or like the Inverne. Like here's a great way to get into this, and this would be a great way to get them into like to peat.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Mhm.
for sure.
Yeah.
I'm not a huge fan of Barrique myself, but I enjoy this.
The nose surprised me.
Yeah.
I didn't think I'd like it because it's such a punch of, again, oil, but it's not the oiliness that I get from a Lagavulin or a Lafroig. It's a different oil, but then the taste, like you were saying, Mark, there's the sweetness in it that is
Right.
just totally unexpected with that nose.
Absolutely, you get
Wow.
that sweetness. You get also, but for me, like a lot of the heavy phenolics and even the wheel. When I said airplane glue, that's a smell, right?
Mhm.
But also, I'm getting some rubber,
Yeah. Mhm.
and it's not unpleasant. Obviously, I mean, it wouldn't be in that profile. But I also am getting our house style again. This creaminess, all of the whiskeys that we tried today were very, very pleasant and approachable on the palate. And I think that really speaks volumes of our distillation process. But also with this one, we will push out in the future a higher ppm, but also we're going to look to do higher ABVs. And I think that's the key thing, is to always have expressions to see where they resonate with our clientele. You have the peat aficionados that that's all they have. They're going to do when we go to Ardbeg, you're doing Ardbeg Scorch, you're doing Corey Vrecken, you're doing any of the fillets, the Isla series, and then of course the Octomores, the 1,226 ppms expressions. But people really love them. But people who say that they don't like peated whiskeys, or they didn't really gravitate towards them, they try this, I've changed people, converted them, and I think that's a good thing. It's just good to know that we have a good, solid Canadian peated whiskey on the market for people to actually call their home and sit it up there next to any of the other 8 Islas that may be there. Now 8, 9 now, right? You got Ardnahoe, and you got St. Magdalene's coming online and stuff like that, and that's great. But again, I have to swing the Canadian flag that I'm super proud that we're making a solid product. We're making a very good
Really, really
product.
love the whiskey.
What I really like is considering that this is a spirit, it doesn't have that peppery sensation. It's actually quite smooth, and it's got a lot of flavor. And I mean, it's worth remembering, just because it starts at 55 ppm doesn't mean that it actually ends up at 55 ppm. So undoubtedly,
Exactly.
what the stills that you were talking about, they will temper that. And this falls into that category that I like to call like the ship timbers, like the creosote. And there's that wood smoke, but it's a really pleasant wood smoke. You know, it's not a lot of coal, it's not a lot of tar or ash. It's got a bit of oil, but that's not the defining characteristic of it.
No, I get, and I agree
For
with
me, I'd like to have the 10-year-old.
Oh,
That's where I'd sit with it. Like, I don't dislike it, but I'd like to wait.
See how it ages.
Yeah. No, absolutely. I think all of these are going to age very well. Particularly, I mean, these will be transferred over to single malts, of course. We have a line called the Inverne series. This one just came online, but it's in the Muscat particularly. But we do have Portuguese red wine Barrique and ex-American bourbons. These ones will just get older and more delicious. And of course, this is going to progress equally as aggressive, I would say, as the rest of them.
Now, if you're losing more to the Angel's share, I know that does give a slightly different value to the age. You know, like
Okay, so I'll back off from 10 years.
Yeah, because I'm just thinking, you know, like rums in the Caribbean, you've got a 5-year rum, and that's the equivalent sometimes to 10 or 15-year-old Scotch, just because of how
Well,
much
the Amroot
yeah.
example is perfect, right? So
Yeah. But definitely a couple more years. And maybe that's why, even though this is not officially it's called a spirit instead of a single malt, it's really showing a lot of that refinement that you would see with Kilchoman, who has very young releases in comparison.
No, and I agree 100%, because as I said earlier, these are a good indication of the quality in the distillation process, that as they develop, they're only going to get more delicious. Super more much so.
Another question from Alberta is, when are you yourself, Robin, going to be visiting Alberta and doing some shows or tastings or whatnot?
Very soon. I stayed in town here in Winnipeg just for this event, and I'm flying to LA tomorrow. And then the next day, I'm going to be doing a tasting at the #1 LA whiskey bar called 7 Grand or Jackalope, a very famous place. And if you look online with it, Casey Levantin, who's a GM, is Canadian. And all the big dogs go there. And he just wrote a funny note saying that in all the years that they've been open, they've never had a showcase of Canadian whiskey. So we're going to be the first Canadian whiskey to show, and I'm going to do the triple distilled Irish there as well. So I'm really excited. So this event here is going to basically be on the backdrop of another great event. So from there, then I go back to San Diego. I'm there for a couple weeks. Then I go to BC for the BC Highland Games, and then I will be possibly going to Alberta from there. So if you're interested in doing something, please let us know, and we'll make something happen. Alberta is a big market. They drink a lot of whiskey. Winnipeg, Manitoba drinks a lot of whiskey as well. And some of
We're doing our best.
Yeah, some of them, quite frankly, some of the most knowledgeable people that I've met so far in my travels have been from Alberta or Winnipeg. Now, Ontario is very big, very large, but it's so spread out over smaller towns, over a large area, and it's harder to get that concentration of people there. Like Kingston, Ontario, has actually got some great clubs. Winnipeg, and they're smaller cities, and that's really where some of the big clubs come from, which is kind of fun. I love Kingston. I think it's a great city.
Another question is, do you have plans for a rum finish?
I'm going to be honest with you, something that Graham has said, but he's never really developed on it. Possibilities. We are working with a half a dozen, if not more, but we had a bunch of finishes that we were discussing, but we dropped them from our line. If anything, Moonzanara, Graham's kind of giving me the okay to see if I can source some Moonzanara. Those of you who like Japanese.
Moonzanara, yeah.
Yeah. And which are amazing, right? Very expensive and very leaky barrels.
There are also some native wood Korean oak barrels that are now being made, which nobody except for some. There's a new single malt distillery, 2 of them actually, in South Korea now using them.
Wow,
that would be something to think about too.
No, that's something to think about. I would jump on that fat kid and a smarty right there, and knowing our similarities and something like that, exactly. And what I want to do. But we are looking to do something unique. Of course, using finishes can be gimmicky. Some people have said, but there's a good half a dozen core ones that I think that leads a lot to a really delicious and creative dram expression. But some people are getting maybe a little over the top, and some people look down on it. But at the end of the day, those who do appreciate a good whiskey,
gimmicky finishes or anything Jameson has done.
So you're telling me you don't like the orange?
I don't know.
Yeah. I was recently in New York for I didn't even make St. Patrick's Day. I was laid up, let's say, and the orange just came out, and everybody was drinking it, and I was in an Irish bar doing some Irish work, and the guy goes, "Well, you got to try the Jameson orange." And I said, "Oh, of course," because I'm not going to say no to any whiskey. Mm-hmm. And I tried it, and I'm like, I just put it down. Thank you very much. And that was it, right? I was like, I'm never going back to that. And he said, "What do you think of it?" And I said, "It'd probably be good in a cocktail." Mm-hmm. Right? And that's probably what it's for. Yeah. So I don't get those. Yeah. And they're everywhere. Mm-hmm. They're huge. They put them out. They must be giving huge discounts on that.
Another comment was that the Poucheen, the Oaken Poucheen, was kind of like, maybe this is sort of like Canada's answer to Redbreast.
Poucheen.
Interesting story. I was in. I'll follow up on that. So I was in San Francisco for the recent November, December Whiskey Live, and that's done by the Whiskey Advocate. So I was there. At the end, we were drinking with Ardbeg. It was a very intimate table. So it was Macaloney, Ardbeg, Redbreast, and Robin Robinson. You must know Robin Robinson. He's very famous.
Yes,
Yeah,
the
guy.
writer.
The writer, yeah. And so they're all sitting around, and I was like, being Canadian and trying to, he's got some big dogs at the table here. None of them brought a bottle. I brought a bottle of this. Right? We're an Irish bar. We're all just chilling out. I was the only one in the kilt everywhere I go, no matter what. I'm always the only one in the kilt. And I poured a proper dram. It was a good ounce for everybody, ounce and a bit. And then I just watched everybody's eyes, right? I went up there. I actually stood back so they didn't see me staring at them like, what do you think? And all their eyes lit up. Everybody was going like, smelling and sniffing.
Yeah.
And it wasn't smelling or sniffing like, oh, this, it was
like,
actually, it's
yeah.
like they're digging into it. They're
Mhm.
going to the nose, going to the palate, going to the nose, and then they're talking much together. And the guy from Redbreast is just going like, it's almost like tears maybe coming out of his eyes. Like, here's this young Canadian distillery. And then in the end, Robin Robinson came up to me, or somebody, no, sorry, it wasn't him, but somebody went up to me, was like, that's really good. And I said, I think these guys are really sorely impressed with how good that your whiskey was. And for such a small little distillery. And for me, that was really nice and resonated with me, to be able to be sneaky to get them to try it. And Graham liked that story. But, and Whiskey Live, yeah, it was all the top people, and they loved it. I love Redbreast. I haven't tried the 27 yet. I got a bottle waiting for me. But I like to think as we develop, we're going to be as good as, we're already winning awards. We're already winning awards for this, but we're going to be one of the best. Well, wait a minute. We're already the best, and we're so young. But we're going to just continue to do accolades. Now, those of you who distillate, and maybe you could tell people more, is that we're going to be changing our wash from basically about 6 to 7, and we're going to bump it up to 10. Now, what that does to the complexity and the mouthfeel and the concentration and everything else after that is only going to take this game and go even further.
Can you say that one more time? The watch is going to be going from
6 to 7 to 10.
10%.
Yeah. So that's going to be incredible. What would you think that's going to do?
Like you said, it's definitely going to bring out more. So my question for you, I was actually kind of curious because you're talking about like being so ester driven. Do you know how long the ferments are offhand?
I do, but I can't tell you.
Okay, so I figure.
And since you work for a distillery, I'll definitely not tell you.
Yeah,
No, because Graham, he's some things he just says that I can't tell people.
Yeah, no,
He's
'cause-
pretty, I know, but I'm going to say, and also if you're asking me about yeast, I can't tell you.
Yeah, no, 100% yes.
But I can tell you that we're using 2 types of yeast.
Yeah.
And I can tell you one of them is brewer's yeast.
No, that's fair enough.
Yeah. But in terms of our fermentation time, open or close, none of that.
Yeah, no,
I can't disclose that, unfortunately. But if you come, even if you go by the distillery, they won't tell you. I know. Yeah. And actually, Mike Nicholson just stares at you. Even for me, when I first came on, he was like, "How long am I going to be around?" He didn't know if I was going to be here a month, 2 months. And as you were saying, like traveling 200 days a year is absolutely tough.
Yeah.
And throw working for a liquor company involved. I mean, some days you wake up and go, I just missed a plane. Oh my God. And so it's very difficult, right? So so he wouldn't tell me things because he didn't think I'd be around long enough. So I've been here for quite some time now. Now he talks to me.
You leveled up, have you?
Yeah. So I got to open up the United States, though. That's the whole thing. For me, like I'm born and raised in BC, but I joined the U.S. military when I was 18 years old. So I served 5 years in the U.S. Navy as a paramedic, a corpsman with the Marines. And I was 100% trouble. That's what they said. Robin, he's a nice guy, but the Canadians, they can be difficult. So, but I ended up just playing rugby. And in the end, I used to play all Navy, coach Marine Corps teams, and I was the team socializer. So I organized all the parties. So I saw where this was all going in the beginning, right? But I'm really there as a front person to go out there and try to get our product known, recognized as a good, solid Canadian whiskey, 100% Canadian made, 100% barley, everything else, and the passion. And to tell everybody that our history it's not the same as American. In fact, our history is in parallel to them, right? Because we blend separately. They're doing mash bills. At the end of the day, age statements, well, those are new things. I was having an interesting conversation at the whiskey show a few weeks back with Don Livermore, and I did a masterclass, and he did his masterclass. His was filled, and mine was half filled because it's Don. And Don, we're sitting there in the Elephant Castle across the street from Roy Thompson, and he goes, "Robin, let me tell you something. And I didn't tell anybody about the angel share, right? So do you know where the angel share came from? This is a really good one. Do you know how it came about?"
I have an idea. I don't know the entire story.
So basically, the government would go to the distillery here in Canada, and they said that you distilled 1 million liters of juice, but there's only 800,000 left of it here.
Yeah.
What happened to the 200,000 liters? And then and they basically said the dissipation of the alcohol and the process and where it is and the dunnage and et cetera, et cetera. But the research after that was done is 100% Canadian. Where the name angel share came in is debatable, but we can hold the fact that the angel share or the name of whiskey or all these various different things are Canadian. And that's what Don Livermore was saying to me. He's going like, "Robin, I am a big proponent of Canadian whiskeys." And I took it to heart because he's royalty. He's Canadian distilling royalty. And that's where I say when I go out, I have to tell the Americans, I have to teach them in a nice subtle way. They could take a hit in the head better than most people. But, we're here to say that our whiskeys, Macaloney's Island on an island distillery is the next big thing. And hopefully you and your children are drinking it. And I think they will be. Legal age children. Or else, as our parents used to do. I'm sure.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
"Oh, you got a cold."
Can I have some more, Mom?
Yeah, totally. Right. Whiskey around the lips. "Oh, my back hurts. Whiskey around the lips." "I got a scrape. Whiskey around the lips." That's cool. Then you're like 13, 14. "Mom, I got a sore elbow and a head. Just keep on doing it until I feel better." So I think we're really in a really unique time. So this is a great time to be, doing what we're all doing, sharing and seeing the new expressions that have been brought out to the world, and they're becoming more valuable, and people are becoming more discerning. And we have new distillers, like, I'm an international brand ambassador, but we have new young distillers right here, triple distilled collectors and investor owner, everybody investor owner at the table, Macaloney Island Distillery. You can become an investor as well. We are the only crowd-funded distillery in this country. And we also have a cask program. We're the only ones that you can build casks. You want a triple distilled Irish.
Why don't we have a cask?
We should get one. We'll have to figure that out.
And to design the whole style, I'll send you our cask program offer. And it's a great way, and you put your own labels on it. And I'd like to say to Mark, thank you, because he gave me a great shirt.
Oh.
And you can put that label right on it.
That'd be really cool.
There's all these interesting things. And everybody out there, that person that's in Spain, if he was interested in getting a cask, you can talk to James.
A cask. Okay, so
James
David in
Jax.
Spain, a cask would be a good option to maybe get the ball rolling for Spain.
And you can do it in Oloroso and Pedro Jimenez.
That would be fantastic, because
Right.
that's a really nice,
Right.
lovely whiskey.
Exactly. It's made, I got my whiskey made in Canada, but we're putting it in our own barrels. So it'll be interesting. And we have a lot of interesting stuff that's coming out. So I'm excited, and I'm really proud to share it with the world. Like I say, for me, thank you very much for having me as a guest.
Oh, no, thank
Here.
you. And I wish we had more buns and seats here, but it's Saturday. It's also post-whiskey festival. We lost a couple people due to post-festivity blues.
Yeah.
And other
Called
people are at the
unavailable.
lake and whatnot. The
Yeah.
weather in Manitoba has finally kind of become more like Manitoba. So,
For 4 months.
yes.
And then the other 8 months. So,
Just like
that.
It's
Wow,
a real pleasure. A real pleasure for the club, and a real pleasure for me and the viewers that are following along now. And I think we want to have you back for a full-on club night at some point in the next year. Would be fantastic.
And I'll be in my kilt.
And we'll make that a plan. And I know that you have to get yourself ready to get going. We're a little bit beyond the 3 o'clock that we kind of set aside.
Not too bad. I have to go find a place that I can get a rapid test for flight.
I know of one. It's on Isabel downtown. It's called actually Rapid Test Winnipeg.
Oh, good. I have to do that and then pack and I'm doing we have various events going on that I'm curating around Canada at the moment. So it's exciting times. I'm just glad I got an opportunity for everybody here to meet new friends, I like to say. I'm just going to say, as we discussed, for everybody here, I'm going to give a discount code to Mark. I'll send it to you via email.
Great.
You can do how you get out to your viewers. The discount code will give you 10% off. You're a founder owner, you probably get double. If you order 2 bottles more, I'll pay for shipping. And that at this point in time, that's about $40. And you get actually an opportunity to get our cask strength and as well as our Glen Lloyd.
Is it possible to make that code unique so
Yes.
that you're aware of how this event turned out?
No, you can make it specific to
Okay.
your club. I usually make it
That'd
to
be
the
fantastic.
clubs. Whatever you want it to be, and make it
Okay.
easy for your clients or your viewers and your members. That's absolutely. You can tell me exactly what you want.
Sounds great.
Okay.
Perfect. Well, anyway, I'm going to sign off online here. So thanks everybody for watching. Mark Hoffman here, Whiskey Whistle, and thank you for checking out Macaloney's here with Robin Morgan. And I'll say good night, goodbye, wherever you are. Take care. Thanks very much.
That was nice.
All right.